Good morning, I'm Kara Rucker. It's Wednesday, March 12th, and these are your Unbiased Updates. With President Donald Trump's increased tariffs in effect, Europe is now hitting back on more than just steel and aluminum. And U.S. and Ukraine leaders have agreed on terms for a ceasefire with Russia, but the deal requires one important step that's still not guaranteed.
From the Straight Arrow News Studio, bringing the stories that matter to you from across the United States and around the world, these are today's Unbiased Updates.
We begin this morning with several updates on tariffs. The European Union is responding to President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports that just took effect today, with increased taxes of its own. And it's not just steel and aluminum that will be impacted. The EU's retaliatory tariffs also include textiles, home appliances, and agricultural goods. Altogether, the EU says its countermeasures will impact about $28 billion worth of U.S. products. Meanwhile, Australia's Prime Minister says that while the U.S. tariffs on Australian steel and aluminum are unjustified, his government will not retaliate with its own tariffs. This all comes as Canada reverses course on threats to implement a 25% price hike on exports of electricity to Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. That reversal from Ontario's Premier Doug Ford came as President Trump threatened to double tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50% in response. Ford will be meeting with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick Thursday to discuss a renewed trade agreement. Markets are still reactive to the tariff turmoil, with the S&P 500 stock index at its lowest point since September of last year. We started the week Monday with the Nasdaq posting its worst day since 2022 after the president declined to rule out the possibility of a recession. Trump was asked by reporters about this again on Tuesday.
Do you think there will be a recession?
I don't see it at all. I think this country is going to boom. But as I said, I can do it the easy way or the hard way. The hard way to do it is exactly what I'm doing, but the results are going to be 20 times greater.
The U.S. is lifting its suspension of military aid to Ukraine after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country agreed to a 30-day ceasefire in the war with Russia following talks with American officials in Saudi Arabia Tuesday. The U.S. will also resume intelligence sharing with Ukraine, which the Trump administration paused last week as part of its push to broker an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. But as Straight Arrow News reporter Lauren Taylor explains, while Ukraine has agreed to a ceasefire, attention now turns to Russia.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation.
Rubio said the offer will now be taken to the Russians. White House Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin later this week.
And we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court. And but again, the president's objective here is, number one, above everything else, he wants the war to end. And I think today Ukraine has taken a concrete step in that regard. We hope the Russians will reciprocate.
The ceasefire would be for 30 days, and the U.S. will lift a pause on military support for Ukraine, the State Department said in a statement. In a post on X, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country agreed to a 30-day full interim ceasefire, not only stopping missile, drone, and bomb attacks, not only in the Black Sea, but also along the entire front line. Zelensky said Ukraine has been seeking peace from the very first second of the war, and he wants to achieve that as soon as possible. The American side understands our arguments and considers our proposals. I am grateful to President Trump for the constructive conversation between our teams, Zelensky wrote.
That was our Lauren Taylor reporting. President Trump said he'll be inviting Zelensky back to the White House as part of the ceasefire deal, which includes an agreement for the U.S. and Ukraine to come to a comprehensive agreement for developing Ukraine's critical mineral resources. It comes less than 2 weeks after a tense Oval Office exchange between the two presidents. They were supposed to sign a mineral agreement that day, but it ended with Zelensky leaving the White House earlier than expected with no deal signed. The U.S. Senate is set to vote on a bill to keep the government from shutting down come Friday after the House passed a stopgap Tuesday night. The 217 to 213 near party line vote saw one Democrat join nearly all Republicans, with just one GOP lawmaker vote against it, Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie. Now the pressure is on Senate Democrats to decide whether to back the measure known as a continuing resolution, which extends government funding at current levels. Republicans control 53 Senate seats, and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has made clear he's firmly against the measure. That means at least 8 Democrats would have to support the bill to cross the Senate's 60-vote threshold and send it to President Trump's desk. If the measure passes both the House and Senate, it would keep the government funded until at least September. Immediate changes are in the works for Reagan-Washington National Airport in Washington, D.C., after the NTSB released a report on the mid-air collision of an American Airlines passenger jet and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter that killed 67 people in January. Straight Arrow News reporter Kaylee Carey breaks down what's changing.
The National Transportation Safety Board released urgent safety recommendations Tuesday, calling for a ban on helicopters near Reagan National Airport. American Airlines expressed gratitude for the report and the urgency in restricting flight schedules. The report focuses on planes flying over 4 miles of the Potomac River preparing to land or take off from runways 15 and 33. Within hours of the NTSB's report, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said the FAA will implement flight restrictions moving forward. This means all helicopter traffic will pause when planes are near. Before the recommendations, helicopters could fly alongside landing planes with only 75 feet of vertical distance between them. A report details what happened when a U.S. Army helicopter, reportedly on a training mission, struck a passenger jet just before landing. Investigators say warning signs were clear, citing over 15,000 near-miss events between 2021 and 2024, where aircrafts came within 1 nautical mile of colliding. Data suggests pilots may have missed radio transmissions from the control tower. The report states the Army helicopter crew probably didn't hear important calls, including one that alerted them the jet was circling. NTSB says the Black Hawk was supposed to fly at a 200-foot altitude limit, but was likely around 325 feet at impact. Conversations from the crew before the crash revealed the cockpit data was inaccurate and didn't alert them to the altitude. The federal government is working on creating alternative routes around restricted airspace for law enforcement, presidential travel, and military flights. The report didn't determine the exact cause of January's collision, offering only preliminary findings and probable cause.
That was our Kaylee Carey reporting. While the NTSB's report did give us an idea of what might have played a factor in January's deadly crash, the exact cause has not yet been determined. A political shakeup in Greenland after its parliamentary elections as the center-right pro-business opposition party won on Tuesday. According to the results, the Democratic Party overtook the ruling left-wing Democratic Socialist Party in an election cycle largely dominated by discussions over President Trump's renewed interest in Greenland and calls from residents for independence from Denmark. The winning party advocated for a slower approach to Greenland's independence, while the party that came in second, Greenland's Independence Party, had campaigned to sever ties with Denmark more quickly. President Trump posted on Truth Social this week the U.S. supports Greenland's right to determine its own future, while still expressing interest in welcoming Greenland to become part of the United States. Finally this morning, Selection Sunday is just days away, and that means March Madness is heating up. Here's Straight Arrow News sports reporter Chris Francis with the latest teams that have earned their way to the big dance.
It's championship week in college hoops, the prelude to March Madness, and automatic bids to the big dance are being earned every night. 7 teams are already in. Tuesday night, 4 more teams punching their tickets. 3 teams, Omaha, Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, and High Point University, will be making their NCAA tournament debuts next week after winning their conference championships. Coach Alan Huss explains what it means in no uncertain terms.
Other than the birth of my kids, my wife would probably get mad at me if I didn't say my wedding day, so I'll say that too. Other than those moments, I don't know that there's anything better than the NCAA tournament. Being a part of it, it's the greatest sporting event on planet Earth.
He might be right. What other sport can send a team with a losing record like St. Francis of Pennsylvania to the dance? Tuesday night, they pulled the upset over top seed Central Connecticut to win the Northeast Conference and punch their ticket. Also Tuesday night, the second seed in the Colonial Athletic Association, UNC Wilmington, fought off a tough challenge from the 12 seed Delaware to win the championship and earn the right to play in the field of 68. It's the Seahawks' 7th appearance, but their first in 8 years. The tournament's projected top seeds remain much the same as they have for the last month. Auburn, Duke, and Houston are as close to locks as you can get. The third number one will likely be decided in the SEC tournament, which tips off Wednesday. Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama are each hoping to impress the committee. The Crimson Tide took down Auburn Saturday in overtime, and after the win, Nate Oates made the case for his team.
So I think with our quality wins we've got, certainly be in the mix. It's just, do we have too many losses? We lost 4 of these ones here in the last 7, which wasn't ideal, but I also don't think anybody in the country's played a 7-game stretch like we've played either. So, we've fought, battled, come up with a big win. We'll see. If we're not a 1 seed and we're a 2 seed, that's not the worst thing either.
We'll find out on Selection Sunday, but there are still some very meaningful conference tournament games to play in the next 5 days.
Chris Francis will have more March Madness updates later today on SAN.com. And Craig Negrelli will be back with you tomorrow morning. These are your unbiased updates for this Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. For all of us here at Straight Arrow News, I'm Kara Rucker. Have a great day.